My name is Melissa Pittman, and I'm an acting director for the Special Education Department.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Darby. I'm the coordinator of environmental health and safety for the district.
Well, we're going to start out with
Good afternoon, everybody.
Oh, sorry.
I'm Shirley Green, one of the school chiefs.
And I'm Cynthia Elliott, Vice President of the Board of Education. Good afternoon.
Leslie Myers, Small Superintendent, and I'll be popping in and out of workshops. So if you see me not on the screen, I'm in another group, but I'm glad to be here.
And good afternoon. My name is Khadijah Muhammad, the Director for Office of Parent Engagement. I have changed my name on the screen to chat with me. You can send direct messages to me. I think our group is intimate enough that we will have the opportunity to just kind of raise your hands and unmute yourselves to accept questions at the end of the presentation.
Okay, ready to go. So I'm going to start for us, and we've made the decision for reopening for January 4th for our specialized programs, and I just want you to go to the next slide, please. To talk about, these are the particular groups that we're addressing in January. These are our students that we know are in smaller classroom situations that require adult support to benefit from learning. And also these definitely are our groups that are struggling greatly with remote learning. So we're very happy to have them back. These are students that participate in a New York State alternate assessment, are autism spectrum disorder students, and that also includes our social communication group of students, and also our students that are working towards a skills and achievement credential, particularly at the upper level as well. Today, though, we're going to really focus on, these are the groups, but we really want you to be aware of the safety and health measures that the district is taking. So I'm going to turn this over to Stacy.
Hi, thank you. The first thing that we're going to do is just review a video that our Chief Operating Officer made, like Michael Schmidt, and then I will go over it in more detail.
Hello, students, families, and staff. My name is Mike Schmidt, and I am the Chief Operating Officer with the Rochester City School District. I am happy to deliver this week's Friday message on behalf of Superintendent Dr. Leslie Myers-Small. The purpose of this week's message is to prepare students, families, and staff for when some of our students return to school buildings in January. Last week, the superintendent announced that K-12 students with disabilities in specialized programs will be offered 4 days of in-person learning. We know many of you want to know what that will look like. Students and staff will wear masks at all times unless a mask break is given. This includes all shared spaces like classrooms, bathrooms, hallways, and buses. Masks must cover your mouth, nose, and chin. This is the proper way to wear a mask. It is important to remember 3 key points. Avoid touching the mask with your hands. Use the straps to put on and take off the mask. And clean your hands frequently with hand sanitizer. The district will follow social distancing guidelines to provide 6 feet of space in all directions between individuals. Our classrooms are set up with desks 6 feet apart. Barriers may be used in situations when 6 feet of space cannot be maintained. Markers will be placed in common areas to indicate 6 feet of spacing. Each school in the district has a supply of personal protective equipment, or PPE. This includes cloth masks for employees and disposable masks for students who may need them. The district has also enhanced existing ventilation systems, increasing the fresh air exchange rate, and installing MERV 13 filters. All shared areas and common spaces will be cleaned and disinfected at least once daily and more frequently in high traffic areas. Teachers and other staff will be provided disinfecting supplies and training on how to clean their classrooms throughout the day. We need everyone to do their part to stop the spread of COVID-19. Parents, it is imperative for you to assess your child's health and take their temperature daily prior to coming to school. Staff, be sure to continue to complete your electronic screening assessment. This must be completed whether you are working remotely or actually working on site. Lastly, it is so important that we have your updated contact information. This applies to both students and staff. Parents, please call your child's school to update your contact information, and staff members, please visit PeopleSoft to ensure your information is updated as well. Thank you for your continued support and partnership as we work together to ensure that safe, high-quality learning takes place for all of our students.
Thank you, Erin. So, the video gives you a nice breakdown of all of our safety precautions that we have in place. And I'm just going to go over them in a little bit more detail. Safety is at our forefront, which includes wearing our mask, using social distance, and using hand hygiene. You can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So like I said in the first slide, our focus really is going to be on social distance, 6 feet of space in all directions. If you guys have been out, the term social distance is everywhere, and the proper use of face covers or masks is going to be very important as well. With hand hygiene, it's washing our hands, doing a good job, using hand sanitizer whenever we're touching any shared surfaces, if we touch our mask, blow our nose, anything like that. And then finally, cleaning and disinfection, I will talk a little bit more about as well. But basically, we are looking to make sure that we clean all of our shared surfaces regularly inside the schools. You can go to the next slide. So with face covers, they have to be worn at all times in shared spaces, such as hallways, restrooms, and buses. They're going to be worn in classrooms at all times as well, unless a mask break is given. The mask break would be given by the teacher. It would only be given when 6 feet of space can be provided inside of the classroom space. So typically that would be when people are sitting at their desks working independently, and they might not be worn during some therapies. For example, I say speech in here. Whenever a mask isn't worn by a staff member or a student for any reason, 6 feet of space will be provided. And if for some reason that space cannot be provided because of the activity that's going on, a physical barrier would be put in place. And then a comment too, we cannot just wear a face shield, or a student or staff member cannot just wear a face shield instead of a mask. They have to have a mask on as well. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. A lot of parents might be curious about face cover exemptions. Monroe County Department of Health has a form that has to be filled out by your physician, and we would have to be provided with that form. There are not many conditions that allow for a face cover exemption. With that being said, it's really important if your student is coming back to get them prepared to wear a mask. One thing that I did at home prior to the start of school was really make sure that my kids practice wearing their mask all around, all over the place, doing things they like to do, giving them positive reinforcement, positive rewards to get them comfortable wearing that mask. The other suggestion is that not all masks are created equal. My daughter absolutely hates every single one except for the one that fits her well. And she, this is probably sharing too much. She'll kill me someday, but she's little. Like, she has to wear her underwear inside out, her socks inside out, stuff like that. She has some sensory issues, and we finally found one that she's happy with. So anyways, that's enough about her. We can move on to the next slide. Hand hygiene. With hand hygiene, that's just making sure we're keeping our hands clean. So before students, staff members eat, when they're coming in and out of classrooms, if they're going in and out of any shared space, they're going to wash their hands with soap and water for 20 seconds or use hand sanitizer. You can go to the next slide. Cleaning and disinfection inside of the buildings will take place regularly. We'll be using an EPA approved disinfectant. We won't be cleaning directly in front of students. For example, if I'm a student sitting at a desk, it's not going to be, my desk isn't going to be sprayed with the disinfectant while I'm sitting there, but cleaning and disinfection will go on even when the students are in the school. And that might look a little different than when we typically would clean and disinfect the schools. You can go to the next slide. You saw in the video one of our custodians changing filters in one of our systems. So our filters are being upgraded to MERV 13 filters, which is a higher filtration rate. We're also increasing the amount of fresh air that's being supplied to the building by extending the amount of time on either end of the day that we bring an increased amount of fresh air in, and also increasing the amount of fresh air that's brought in per hour, essentially, is how that works. And whenever teachers can, if they have windows, they can open them. And that is all about ventilation. One thing I'd like to add is in the beginning of the video, or at the beginning, towards the end, you saw our custodian using the temperature sensor, and students will also be doing that. And Erin's going to talk more about students and screening, but I just wanted to have that in your mind, that that's something that the students will be doing as they're coming through in the morning as well.
Thank you, Stacy. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what's needed to keep our school staff and student and environment safe. So the before school assessment. So prior to leaving from home, we're asking parents to make sure that they ask their children these questions or can answer these questions on their child's behalf. The first question: has your child knowingly been in close contact with anybody who's been diagnosed with COVID in the past 14 days? Have they tested positive for COVID in the past 14 days? Have they experienced any COVID symptoms, including a temperature greater than 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the past 14 days? And have they traveled internationally or outside of the travel advisory states in the past 14 days? We also ask that parents take their child's temperature prior to them coming to school. If that's not possible, their temperature will still be taken at school, but we do prefer that the temperature is taken prior to them getting on the bus. If parents answer yes to any of these questions, we are asking that they keep their child home. The symptoms of COVID are normally a sudden onset and they worsen over time. It is a temperature of 100 degrees or greater. It can be a headache, shortness of breath, nasal congestion, loss of taste or smell, a sore throat, cough, vomiting, diarrhea. So these are common symptoms of many illnesses, as you're aware. We cannot know for sure if it is COVID or if it's a common stomach bug, if it's a cold or flu. So we are asking that we follow the guidelines that's set forth through the Department of Health, and any child who has any of these symptoms is kept home. We ask that you notify your child's school that your child is home because of a COVID symptoms or because of other reasons, such as being exposed to someone who had COVID. In any of these situations, the nurse will reach out to you and let you know the next steps that need to happen. And those next steps will involve you visiting your child's physician and making sure that they have a negative COVID test or an alternative diagnosis. And just to add to that, if your child does have any medical conditions that do have any of the symptoms that may mimic COVID symptoms, we ask that you make sure that the nurse knows of this diagnosis. Doctors can write that this is a symptom and it's a common symptom. If we are sure that this is a normal symptom from your child, we don't want to have to send them home. We don't want to have them get tested and go through the protocol. So if students show any signs and symptoms of COVID while they're at school, they will be separated and kept in a space away from others and monitored until they can be picked up to go home. So it's imperative that we have updated contact information for you. If you could reach out to your child's school if there has been any changes in your contact information. So this is all put in place so we can keep our school environment safe and prevent the spread of COVID or any other illnesses. And to touch on immunizations, all students prior to entering any school building need to be compliant with immunizations. We still have many students who are non-compliant and going through remote learning. There was an extension to the remote learning exclusion requirement, and that is through December 11th. But if your child is returning to in-person learning, they must be compliant with their immunizations. If you are not sure if they're compliant, please, you can reach out to your child's physician or the school nurse and they can let you know. I have attached a sheet with many immunization resources. There are other resources on here about COVID, and there is the toolkit for reopening schools where there's more information on safety precautions. And we are going to open it up to any questions you may have. And I believe, Danielle, you had a question during the last session that didn't get answered.
I was gonna say that, Erin. Danielle, as well as Elizabeth Perry. I don't know if she rejoined us, but yes, Danielle can go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to read what I wrote in the chat because I'm fairly confident that you're able to clean the buildings and keep the kids safe as far as that's concerned. As parents, we were asked to make a decision regarding a January return with very little information. I'm making the assumption that not every single school that houses these classrooms will be reopening. For example, my daughter is at Wilson Foundation, and I believe there's only 3 classes, special ed classes there that would, be under the reopening. So is the plan to place all of these students in a single building or just a very minimal number of buildings? And again, to how this was touched a little bit by Chrissy before as she spoke about her son's experience, but how will teachers be assigned? My daughter's actually been doing fairly well with remote learning, and I feel like we're being forced. If teachers are not allowed to do both remote and in-person simultaneously, depending on the choice that we've made and that you make as a district of where you're going to place teachers, she ends up losing. So that was a lot of questions. Sorry.
I'll start with the first part of your question in terms of the fact where you're absolutely right, because many of our schools have smaller numbers of students. We certainly will not be opening all of our buildings for that number. We are looking at the total number of families who have selected to return, and we will have limited number of buildings that we will operate, and we will share that information once we get all of our numbers and the details together. In terms of your piece around the teacher, I think I'm going to turn that over to Ms. Richmond, who had started in the previous presentation that our goal is to try to have little impact to the teachers the students have. So Desiree, you want to finish that?
Sure. Obviously, this is difficult for all of us, right? We're trying to minimize the disruption to our students as much as possible. But that's why it's so important that we've reached out to families and given them that choice, because you're right, I cannot guarantee that the remote learning teacher could be the same teacher when we go live, because we do have to shift some kids around just to make it so they can stay remote and kids can return to the classroom. And I know it's a very difficult decision for families to make, but the one thing I know about children is that they are resilient. And with the proper preparation for any kind of changes that we might make, I think we could make everyone successful. And I'm hoping that's always my goal is, and I know our department is to prepare students for transitions and prepare them for, being successful in the classroom or with remote learning. These are not the choices we would want to make, right? We, all of us here will say, we just wish we didn't have to deal with COVID, but it becomes a much bigger issue for us. And first and foremost, safety has to come first. And we're doing the best we can. But obviously, if there's questions on an individual basis, you can always reach out to your chairperson, your associate director, or who can help you, and any of us in special education, we'd be glad to problem solve.
So I guess just quick, I just wanted to jump in. So when can we expect some answers? And honestly, I do understand we're all just trying to do the best that we can. But I don't want to wait until, a week or two before Christmas break to find out, what the actual plan is. And also, will we be able to tweak our decision based on what information we gain then?
So we've been working literally. I have two of the directors. Melissa is one of them that's on today. And Amy Tata have literally been working tirelessly to try to determine the best way and how to make class lists and who goes where and what services do they need and what type of buildings and supplies do we need. I mean, it's you can imagine hours and hours and hours of time that they're putting in, and we all are, to try to figure that out. As soon as we make that decision, and we're settled with that, but we're talking with our chiefs, our superintendent, and that information will come out as soon as we possibly can, because we know that is part of your decision.
But will we be asked again though?
I will add to.
Go ahead.
Cheryl, go ahead. What did you say, Cheryl?
Desiree, you and I have talked about the moving parts, right? Like constant moving parts. And there's no right answers here. And I appreciate the time, which is probably every waking moment for you folks. But there's so many questions around what you just said. Are we going to be asked again? Will we be coming back in? Because like Danielle said, our decision might change. And I'm still that one on the fence. And I have a whole host of, requirements that I would need to feel secure to come back. Obviously, what's going on in the status of COVID as well. But are parents going to be given the opportunity, because you're working so hard to do classroom lists, but that could be really.
Anyone who's on the fence, just so you know, we put down as pending.
Okay.
Saving them a spot, right, in the classroom. Now, if people, after everything comes out, they change their mind, we'll finalize things and then go from there. And then periodically, on a case-by-case basis, we'll see what families are thinking, how things are going. And
how many kids are you talking about right now that have said yes?
Oh, that's a good question. So right now, I believe, Melissa, was it 310?
350 right now is our number.
Oh, right, 50. That was the first number.
Right, a little less than half. Were we talking about 800 to begin with?
I think it was a little under 800, but yeah, we're close to, it's a little under half.
Mm-hmm.
And the important thing to remember is, like, these are, as you all know as parents, these are our children in our highly specialized programs. So we need to make sure they have the access to their physical therapy, occupational therapies. There's things that, though we're trying our best in virtual, we don't want the regression to progress too much. So that's why we're looking at all scenarios and trying to make sure we can engage as many kiddos as possible so we can get them back to the services that they need. Because virtual is good for some learning, but it's not doing so good for others. So
I get it. I know.
I just wanted to add, when Ms. Nolan and earlier Ms. Miller spoke about you may have a different teacher. So we have had a lot of conversations about that. And as the department is working around the clock and deciding and determining how that's going to work, once we do know that, we will be sharing that with parents and allowing our students who may have to get a new teacher to be introduced to that teacher in a virtual environment, so that it's not a totally new person when they come in January.
Yeah, we've talked about maybe orientations and, just like you would, a new school year, like I want to meet my teacher, I want to meet, however we do that. So we know that, once things, kids are where we've decided where they all are and the parents are all on board. Okay, what's the next step? How do we introduce those children back into the learning environment? Did we miss anyone else?
Chrissy has her hand up.
Well, okay, I understand what you're saying, but I feel like the question that I really need to hear from you guys is saying, okay, well, this and that, but my issue is my son is doing great in remote learning. My son has improved in remote learning with his 5 teachers, and I'm so grateful for them. It's not fair to us that work so hard with our children on remote to make sure they are remote learning every day and making sure they're doing it. My son, what's really funny about this whole situation is my son knows the routine every day. And you take that from that child, then what? My child will flip, and I know my child very well. So then that would be hard on me to try to get him back to reality. And then not only that, why we can't have no screen setting in the classroom with your regular teacher? So when you have other students in the class, and then you have the kids that's on remote learning, and they're doing the same thing as one. Why we can't have that?
You know, we're not going to be able to, we're going to do the best we can. And this is all I can say, because I don't know where your child is going to fall just yet, right? So we're going to do the best we can to minimize change. But
So-
go ahead.
Nope, I was just going to say, Ms. Washington has had her hand up for a while, but also Vice President Elliott. So if we can get those two, and Ms. Miller, again, we're hearing you. And as we're working through this process, and as soon as we have more answers, we will come back together with the families that are impacted. Ms. Washington?
I just had a question regarding the transition into, because I definitely did vote for my daughter to go back into school. And if there is a different teacher, I'm okay with that as long as she has interacted with that teacher before. And when she has a couple teachers that have been interacting, but I don't know about a new 5th grade teacher. But as far as the transitioning, it takes her a while to transition in anything, and virtual probably won't be good for like a meeting. I don't know if you guys could host a mini kind of open house or something like that. So so it'll just be not a surprise to the classroom, especially if it's a whole new teacher. I think that we owe it to our children to have some type of actual physical open house to prepare for what's going to happen. And also another question is with the buses and everything, is everything going to be organized, separated, where like all the kids are not going to be getting off the bus all at the same time? I'm not even sure what the population is going to be, but I'm sure you guys are working on that part also. So those are my questions.
So in terms of transportation, certainly Mike Schmidt has been working really hard with his department on how to organize that, how many students can be on a bus. We know that the IEPs dictate how many students can be on a bus. So he's working with a team of folks with transportation in terms of when they exit and enter the bus, all of the CDC guidelines will be followed to ensure that social distancing of 6 feet and all of those transitions. In terms of your question around in-person, again, that's something we can take back to our committee, Desiree. That's
For an open house, yeah.
But some kind of in-person open house. So we certainly will take that back to our committee.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Vice President Elliott.
Thank you. I thought that, well, let me just say this, the statement that the one parent made about her child doing well in a remote environment, I heard it before from someone else at a hospital. And so her child is doing very well in a remote environment. We're not requiring those students to come back if they're working well in that remote environment, correct?
Correct.
Or are we requiring them to come back? We're not, correct?
Right.
Right. Parents have a choice. If they
have a choice.
Would like to remain remote, they certainly can remain remote. I think Ms. Miller's biggest concern is she does feel that her son is doing well in remote with the current teacher. And she's concerned that if that teacher has kids that are in person, she goes to in person, what happens to her son?
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then there is a question in the chat. Will students be able to go back to online? And I think this is the answer, but I'll just pose it out there anyway for everybody. Will students be able to go back to online learning if in-person does not work?
So every child who has that request or family that has a request would be considered on an individual basis. But yes, we're going to consider that. We hope people will hang in there for a while to see, at first, because, all switching around is not good for children either. So we're hoping people make, most school districts are asking for about a 10-week commitment, but we're going to be flexible because we want to make sure we're delivering the service. If they get to the classroom and they're not doing well, and they were doing well in remote, and we want to look at both, but we also have to get kids in school eventually, right? So it's going to be on a case-by-case basis.
If I could just share too, the majority of the students that are targeted with these populations are students that participate in our extended school year services over the summer. So really much this exercise is almost like setting up extended school year during the school year. And the beginning of extended school year, that first week really is on establishing relationship, building routine, and that will be pivotal when we get up and running. It won't be, okay, first day of school, we're jumping right in. This is your environment. These are our routines, just like we do when we set up the SY. And the teachers do know those routines too, because they work with the kiddo. So just some reassurance though, that though this is different, this is a population of students that when they do go to extended school year program over the summer, do a transition like this. So we're trying to mirror that so it's at least somewhat familiar for them.
Mm-hmm. And then another question in the chat. Will the parents be able to come in the school or classroom?
So that's a really good question. When I reached out to school districts around, I know all of the other directors in the area, and reached out, what are you doing about that? I will tell you that they said they have a strict policy. Many of them have a strict policy of no visitations only because of the spread of COVID. So I think that's something we need to bring back to our group to discuss further, because it's something, unless, we're trying to stop the spread, right? So we're going to try to limit. And even when we're putting together, you think about speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, we're trying to limit travel of those staff members from building to building. We only want the kids and as few staff as possible in the buildings.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
Anyone? Okay, so this is a really bad one. I volunteered for 7 years in my son's school, and I think one of the worst areas, I loved every minute of it, except for the students' bathrooms. Oh boy. There's a reason why the teachers have their own, right? Are there going to be any changes to what those bathrooms look like, smelled like? Germs are definitely there. Are we using hand dryers, or are we going to make sure there's soap and towels in those bathrooms? And I know this is big for me.
Yeah, I can talk to that if you guys want.
Thank you.
There are paper towels that are supplied in all of the classrooms as well as the bathrooms. The hand dryers have been disabled for the time being due to COVID. And as far as cleanliness, we are working very hard in all of the buildings right now to make sure everything's ready, and there will be more cleaners available. So bathrooms will be getting cleaned. Those are one of those shared spaces that will get cleaned frequently. Now, something that I do have to share, again, maybe too much, in boys' bathrooms, especially young boys, there is an odor that is found that is difficult to get rid of. And that is not indicative of a dirty bathroom. That is indicative of gentlemen using not the best target practice, right? And little boys especially, right? So what happens is that gets in the grout and it gets stuck. And that's terrible to say, but that's what happens. And we do use enzymes to work on that, but that smell doesn't mean that it's not clean and disinfected. And I know exactly the smell you're talking about. Mm-hmm. It's just something that happens. So, but the bathrooms will definitely, as will all of the shared spaces, more attention is going to be paid to those. The other thing is that we will have instructions with the teachers and signage up that as students come in and out of bathrooms prior to using the bathroom, we actually want them to wash their hands. That's a recommendation. And then they'd be washing their hands afterwards. And that's a Department of Health guidance, because remember, the germs don't jump off things. We have to take them from something and get them on ourselves. So there's all of that kind of working together. I hope that answers your question.
It does, and I appreciate the extra focus. That's definitely an area of very big need. Thank you.
Clara, you have one more question you said, and I know that we got the little sign that said they're going to send us away soon. So go ahead, Clara. You're on.
So I just have a question. If the parents, if you guys can consider, if the parents can't come into the classroom, because I'm very involved parent, so that's going to drive me crazy, which I understand. Can we have some type, can you guys figure out an alternative to maybe a video or some type of way of communication? I know her teacher right now, we would have excellent communication. I feel very comfortable, but if there is a change in the teacher, how to make the parents feel more comfortable where they, because usually I'm in there like the first couple days and I know that's not going to happen probably. So a different type of way to alternatives to that.
So Claire, one of the benefits is that we already have the Zoom capability. And so we can do Zoom with parents at any given time during the in-person learning. So we certainly can share with teachers that as a way to connect parents to the classroom, that same tool we use of Zoom when we were remote, we can use while those students are in person.
Awesome. And I definitely would sign off on that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I was thinking technology is a beautiful thing, right? We can use, you know, now that we have become so good at it, we can start using it more. We're going to get cut off soon. And I want to thank everyone for participating in this. And I know they're going to take us back in about 20 seconds to the main room. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. It was nice to hear from everybody.
Thank you, everybody. A great session, great session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
President Elliott.
Mm-hmm.